Hi, my name is Antoinette Oni. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Agreka Build. We manufacture construction materials from agricultural waste fibre. My background is in architecture. I'm also an alum of Central St. Martin's, and yeah, happy to be here. So in this room, the office space, we used Weetex with wood wall boards, and we finished it off with a lime-based plaster by Adaptivate. They're also another UK sustainable construction material brand. And with this room, we were looking at creating a completely breathable build-up. So the wall has been stripped right back. We removed the existing plasterboard back to the bare brick, and then built up the layers from there with a cavity as well. So in this room, we have sensors that monitor the indoor air quality, and we're comparing that with the two other rooms that we've retrofitted to see if there's a major impact or difference with the slight tweaks and changes that we made. So yeah, this is our carbon negative room.
Is this the first space that you've prototyped the Weetex?
So we have done smaller units elsewhere. This is the first residential unit that we've done. And what's also unique about this property is that it's an 1800s farmhouse as well. Wow. So there's considerations around moisture, around the existing envelope that is completely new for this project. So it was quite a nice exercise, and yeah, quite happy with the results.
It looks nice.
Yeah, and it smells good as well.
It does smell good.
Yeah.
What kind of data are you trying to collect and hoping to see that you achieved?
Yeah, thermal performance is one for sure, because it is an insulation material that we're making. So the impact on that, the impact on VOCs, so volatile organic compounds, that's a win for our materials, that we don't emit that compared to other synthetic insulation. So the air monitors pick up that as well. Breathability, so moisture permeability as well. That's one thing that natural fibre insulation adds to a home, especially in older property, that makes it more appropriate for a property, pre-Victorian property. So yeah. So this room we retrofitted with Weetex. So with this build up, we were inspired by the Weatherby system, which is what our retrofit contractors, the partners that we're working with, that's the system they use. So it's a breather membrane, timber battens with an air gap, Weetex, plasterboard, and then standard plaster. So not the Adaptivate, nice funky stuff that you saw downstairs, just your bog standard plaster that you buy. And with this room, it's almost an exact mirror of the next room, but with that room, we went for the absolute standard build up. So that room uses PIR. Okay. It doesn't use Weetex. And what we're doing is we're measuring the difference in thermal performance, in acoustics, in a whole bunch of things. The sensors that we have installed measure all of that. And yeah, so it's like as much as we can trying to get that close comparison. Obviously it's not a perfect art, but a perfect science rather, but yeah, it's the nearest we could get.
With each room we use slightly different methods to sort of measure the differences between.
Exactly. So this and with this room, same with the room next door, we kept the existing plasterboard, because our retrofit contractors, that's how they would typically build. They would never rip off the existing plaster. They would just have the air gap and insulate over it with an IWI. So yeah, that's what we tried to do with this room. Again, the thinking around that was, I mean, we can come up with like the perfect, breathable, completely natural envelope, but adoption is a big barrier, and you have to reach your target audience in a way that they're already working. So with this, we're just swapping like for like, instead of using PIR, using Weetex, and then measuring the performance and if that truly works.
Okay. That was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
Sort of this method of building, is it one that construction companies already have the skills with, or would they need some upskilling in terms of
Yeah, yeah. So this room is the one that we didn't have to convince the guys of anything. They just were happy to do it because it was the way that they're used to. Downstairs, slightly different. So lime plaster behaves differently to your standard plaster. It takes slightly longer to dry. It behaves slightly differently. So a plasterer who's thinking on the clock, I need to be in and out of here as soon as possible to get onto the next job. Your first thought wouldn't be to use a lime plaster, but just because it's a bit slower. So that takes a bit of what do you call it? Convincing and coaxing for builders to adopt that method. But one thing I will say is there's so many other incentives for the industry to adopt natural materials. One of which is, again, this is direct feedback from the builders. They much preferred working with our material than working with plastic. They said they don't feel it on their chest as much when they're installing. Yeah, they don't, because after like a day or two of working with PIR, they're like really struggling to breathe all the toxins. Yeah, it's not great at all.
I didn't realize it was a thing that the builders would actually feel physically.
Yeah,
they
yeah.
would have like invisible effects, but not ones.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and even other builders I've spoken to, fiberglass and mineral wool has actually been the worst.
I've heard about fiberglass.
Yeah,
like very small particles.
Yeah, and if you're like covered in it, what I have heard is like when you go home and shower at the end of the day, all your pores open up and the shards go right in, and it's like you're just itching all weekend, and then Monday morning you have to start again handling the same stuff. So it's just like really not great. And again, that's what we've had in mind as we design our materials. We're always constantly talking to not just the end user, the occupant, but also the installers as well, and finding out what their hang-ups are. What are some of the challenges they deal with in the workplace and the materials that they use. Yeah. I don't know if I'm biased, but I feel like this room smells more synthetic.
Yeah, I think so.
It just smells more like, the new sofa smell. Yeah.
Or like it smells a little bit like if you had a new mattress and maybe had plastic over it, that sort of smell.
Yeah, yeah. And funny thing, furniture, mattresses, all the rest of it, drenched in flame retardants in the UK. So again, that emission of VOCs is probably the difference that you're smelling. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish you'd showed us the 3 different rooms and not told us which one it smells.
I'll do that next time.
I can smell it and then you can ask me, which one do you think?
Okay. That's good. I'll do that next time. That's a good idea, actually. Yeah, so that's this room. Again, same sort of Weatherby inspired system, just using the PIR insulated plasterboard. Yeah, that's that.
Do you imagine it being painted over?
We are going to paint it, yeah. I'm just waiting for the owners to decide what colour paint they want to use. Okay. So in this room and that room, we're using standard, paint brand that you get off the shelf in UK, any retailer. And then downstairs, we're using a really, really great company. They're a Swedish company called Keem Paints. They've been around for like 200 years, plus maybe. And they make a mineral-based paint. I think they use silica, so it's a natural, breathable paint. Really great range of colours, and so we're using that downstairs.
I'm assuming you imagine that the paint might have some sort of effect on
big time. Yeah, big time. So paints are really important because if you're going for a breather build-up like downstairs, you want it completely vapor permeable. So you want moisture to be able to travel back and forth through the build-up so the building can breathe. If you now put a synthetic paint, like your standard, I don't want to mention anything, but your standard brands, just, the one with the dog, that's what those brands, they aren't breathable. I believe that more and more they're coming out with breathable ranges. But there are completely natural paints, natural pigments that you can use, clay-based pigments, lime-based paints as well, and for that natural build-up, because it's like, how do I explain it? It's like, it's like wearing a completely breathable, like clothes, say, cotton, wool, and then you just top it off with a polyester jacket. It's just like you're just going to be a sweaty mess. So it's like you want the entire build up to be breathable. Yeah. So paint is a big one, and it's so overlooked, but it's really important.
I thought it would stay like this. I kind of like it. It looks a bit like that, like stained war trend that people are doing.
Oh yeah, the lime wash.
Yeah, lime wash.
Yeah,
that's what it looks like.
See that, right? So lime wash is using lime pigment, right, traditionally. But then I've seen so many tutorials online where they're using synthetic paint to try and replicate a lime wash. And I'm just like, babe, just go for the lime wash. Just go for the lime wash. Like, it's better for your health. It's, no VOCs. But again, it's just like making these products more readily available, more affordable as well. And more convenient for people to just get off the shelf, rather than trying to get a petrochemical based paint and like brush it in a way that replicates exactly what the natural material does. These are the insulated darts that go in that fix both the wood wall and the insulation to timber battens that are fixed on the wall.
And is this all at 1:1 scale?
Yes, this is 1:1.
It's actually a lot thinner than I expected.
You can go thicker, but again, with an older property, you have to consider moisture, and there's all these other factors at play. So sometimes not over insulating is actually best, because you can actually do too much. Yeah, and then it messes with moisture permeability and all the rest of it. So we don't actually need as much insulation as we think we need oftentimes, which is good.
Okay. Yeah. And are you imagining that this kind of always functions as like a retrofit?
That is a good question. I was actually asked that last week as well. I am very passionate about retrofit. One, because that's where we can maximize impact in the UK, because the majority of the housing stock is already built, right? And there's already households living in fuel poverty, living with just not great conditions, mold, condensation, all the rest of it. So I'm more so passionate about that. However, we have designed WeTex to be applicable in new build applications. And more so what I'm really, really interested in is prefabricated buildings. Because if we can work B2B, business to business, with companies that prefabricate homes in the UK, supply them with local materials instead of having to ship from other parts of the world, then again, we can really maximize impact, lower our carbon emissions, use local biomass to build local homes. Definitely. And that all ties in. So yeah, that's what I'm really passionate about.
And in the case of this home, did the kind of waste material that went to making the WeTex come from a source that was close?
Absolutely. I'm sure you saw on the way here, there's a lot of straw. So what's unique about Cheshire is there's a lot of wheat production, and then we don't have a lot of dairy production here. So in other places like Dorset, for example, they've got dairy farms, and farmers will typically just exchange some straw for some muck. So the dairy farmers will use surplus straw for bedding for their cattle. We don't have that here, so there's a huge surplus of straw. So we just use straw that comes from down the road from our production facility, process it, turn it into boards, and then use it in local projects like this one.
That's really good. Yeah. I remember when you gave us that talk, you said how the farmers used to sort of burn the surface straw.
Yeah, as a feedstock for biofuel, for example. But even then, it's still not enough. There's still so much that we produce. And the way I try and inform people about this is, for every 2 grains of, for every 2 tons of grain, there's a ton of straw. So if you think about every slice of toast, every croissant, every bowl of cereal that you have, that's generating grain. There's just as much straw produced from that grain as well, half as much. So it's a big problem, and it needs to be tackled right away. So.
Now, a little bit of a jump back to the beginning, but I've heard the story, but how did you actually come to co-found Agreka Build?
Okay, so good one.
Yeah.
So again, shout out to Central St. Martin's. So Hotak, is he still at CSM? Okay, great. So his newsletters that he sends around with all the different opportunities. I was working as a graduate teaching assistant at Central St. Martin's, freshly graduated, I think like a year out of uni. So I was still getting those emails. And there was one in particular, it mentioned about a program called the Climate Entrepreneurs Club that Imperial College London were hosting. So this is a 10-week program for students and recent graduates to join who are interested in a climate focused or environmentally focused venture. So yeah, just being nosy and curious, I just signed up, applied for it, and then got into the program. There's like, I think 60 participants or something. It's quite a lot of people. And with that, in the early days especially, there were quite a few networking events so that participants could meet each other, have conversations, see what if they aligned or got on well, and then would start a venture together. And then you go through the 10-week program with that venture in mind. Build a pitch deck, establish what your problem is, what your solution is, really refine on the team, your business model, all these things. And during that time, I was kind of in a crossroads. So I was either going to do a PhD, do my part 3, maybe continue in academia. And I wasn't really hot on any of those options. But at the same time, like with entrepreneurship, I was just like, I'm not an entrepreneurial person at all. Like I feel like I'm a born employee, or so I thought. I just didn't think the world of business was for me. But then, yeah, just again out of curiosity, just joined, and it just opened up my world as to what entrepreneurship is, as to what business is, and it wasn't what I thought it was. So I dropped a lot of my prejudices as well. And the very first day that I joined, went to the networking event through CEC, I met my co-founder, Millie. She's born and raised in Vietnam, worked all across Southeast Asia with the UN, working with farmers and rural communities to help them get more value along the supply chain. And this is actually her 3rd venture. So wow. She was a social entrepreneur before. Also met Han Ming, our other co-founder. He's getting his PhD at Imperial, and his background is in civil engineering. And he had previously just won a prize for decarbonized cement mix formula using agricultural byproduct in that as well, biochar. So the 3 of us just kind of hit it off just from the beginning. I had this existing idea. I was actually more so looking at not just agricultural waste, but also invasive plant species and the biomass that could be created from that. And that's how we ended up founding Agreka Build. We quickly found that with invasive species, whilst it's great because you can address an immediate problem, once you scale, it's really difficult to secure your feedstock. And then also, if you're like relying on this particular biomass, eventually you're going to tip the scales from addressing the problem to actually cultivating that plant solely for your need, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense.
Yeah, so you'll start farming it.
The invasive species will be gone, which should be the goal, exactly. Really.
That is the goal. But then if you want to like continue a sustainable business, after a while you're going to start farming it essentially to deal with what you need to do to make your material. So we quickly just focused in on agricultural waste. And honestly, the problem of crop residue is so large. Like, we've got our hands full just with that. Even more so just with wheat straw alone, because there's other types of straw. There's oat, rye, barley, all different types of straw, but wheat straw is the most abundant, at least here. And then if you go to other parts of the world, rice straw and all the rest of it. So yeah, we have our hands full.
So wheat straw, that's what you use to make Wheatex?
Yes, that's what you use.
That's your material. Could you explain to us specifically how like Wheatex as an idea came about and the early development process?
Yeah, that's a good one. So we again through CEC, I think it was like week 2 or 3 in, we had like a brainstorming session. That particular session was actually hosted at Central St. Martin's. And it was me, it was Millie, Hanming, and a few others, and we were sat down just brainstorming names of the material. We knew that we wanted to make insulation. We knew that we wanted to make it from wheat straw waste again, because essentially we worked backwards. We looked at, okay, what's the biggest issue in construction or the built environment at the moment? Cold homes. What's the biggest issue in agriculture at the moment with regards to crop residue, wheat straw? So we just took those two big things and then just smushed it together. That's the problem we're going to deal with. And then from there, we were like brainstorming names. So it was like, yeah, wheat. And then I liked the idea of textiles. So text, whatever we were going to choose, it was going to be text at the end.
Okay.
And then I also love the fact that WeTex has heat in it, in the word as well. So that's part of our branding because the heat in it is outlined as well. And then in terms of the material, we were doing a lot of early prototyping. So, disrupting straw fibers, a lot of kitchen backyard science, mixing it with different things, lime, different binders, natural materials that we could use. We were making some movement there, but then we ended up finding a partner scientist who had done his PhD on this topic. He had developed an acoustic panel from rice straw, but what's unique about that material is that there's no synthetic binder. So we got him on board. He's actually part of the co-founding team. And then that just saved us a lot of time in the lab trying to develop a material from scratch. And we already had this material. And then we just built on top of that IP.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming you just mentioned the heat being a thing you wanted to make visible in the name.
Yeah.
Is that because if the heat is what replaces the need for synthetic binder? Is that part of the process?
That's a good question. It's not.
Okay.
But it's just the fact that we're insulating heat in the build up.
I thought maybe it was some sort of heat process that like binded.
No, heat is generated in the process, but it's not it's not used in the production of it.
Okay.
Which actually keeps our carbon emissions low as well.
Yeah, that does make sense.
Yeah. But that's a great thinking.
Yeah. And I know that you've just you said the Innovate UK.
Yes.
You've kind of gotten a big pot of funding recently to be able to go from testing to maybe like manufacturing.
Yes.
And how do you see that pathway working?
So we incorporated, just to round off the story. So we finished CEC at Imperial. At the end, there's a competition, a pitch competition, and that was at the Royal Institution. That was in March 2024. Yes. And we won. Our company won, and we got a whopping £2,000 prize. And we used that money to incorporate the company, pay off some legal fees as well, and just sort of formalize it. It just felt like, we can't just drop it here. Like, let's keep it going. Let's just see how far we get. And then we were looking at raising investment for our idea. We had this early prototype. We had a brand name. We had the team. So, it was me, Millie, and Hamming, like working over the weekends, like any spare moment we had to really like build this and make it a thing. We ended up raising private investment in October 2024. And that same week, we also were awarded an Innovate UK Smart Grant, which is one of the hardest to get, apparently. I didn't know this at the time. But essentially what Innovate UK Fund is innovation in business. So there are other funding arms and funding columns from the UK government, but Innovate UK is specifically for ventures. And we had previously applied, didn't get it, which was really infuriating because we had a really high score. So we had no idea how to improve the application, but we just resubmitted anyway. And then thankfully we got it that time round. From that we funded our production facility, equipment, recruiting more staff, scaling up our production from lab scale, so making samples that are only this big to making samples that are as big as what you need to install in a building. And that's where we are today. And we've since raised some other funding as well. But that was the biggest part.
Nice.
Yeah, to get us started.
And where do you hope to go in the future?
Good question. Good question. We've already had a lot of international interest in what we're doing. And the way we've designed our pilot line is in a way that you could replicate it anywhere in the world. So I just got back from India last month, and in places like Delhi, straw burning is a huge issue. And it's actually not only degrading the air quality there, but it's also cutting the life of residents short. So one statistic I heard, which is awful, is your average Delhi residents, their life expectancy is cut by 8 years just because of the quality of air, and that's directly linked to the straw burning that happens. And that again is tied right back to us here in the UK. It's not just a them problem, it's an us problem, because a lot of the rice that's produced in those regions are consumed all over the world, most especially in the UK. So to me, I want to also create impact in those parts of the world. And there's a lot of construction also happening in places like Asia, the Middle East, North Africa, the US as well, like huge potential for impact there. So I want to start working with partners in those regions and do what we do here over there. Yeah.
And do you see that happening with just wheat straw, or as you mentioned, have you kind of designed your process so it can work with different?
So straw is very similar on a fundamental level. There's slight variations in the content of silica. So for example, from what I know, rice straw has slightly more silica than wheat straw. Rice straw is like really well structured, so that's actually used in a lot of veneer work. Oat straw is like super golden, but from what we found, the end material performs the same. Okay. So you can vary slightly on feedstock, and there's an ever so slight change on the texture, the color especially. So the oat straw is a lot more golden, barley is a lot more white. Wheat straw is darker, but overall it's pretty much the same. From our experience, it's pretty much the same.
And that means there's like so many waste streams out there in the world globally.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then another thing I'm really excited about is product diversification. So we've played around with the density of the material, and we can actually make a chipboard alternative that's really rigid, like MDF essentially, with our material. So I'm really excited to look into that, because that opens up other markets like furniture production, installs, like places like this kitchen, for example. And it also alleviates some of the burden on timber. So straw is, or wheat, for example, is harvested twice a year. So that's 2 times that you're generating straw waste that can then be used in products like ours. Whereas with timber, you have to wait typically 7 years for a harvest cycle. So, and then there's so many other uses that we can use timber for, in like mass construction and structural elements, that I'm just like, where we can swap out for a complementary material like ours, we should, in my opinion. So
yeah. I also know a lot of the timber in the UK is imported.
Oh yeah, we don't have the indigenous timber. Yeah, we don't have the native timber industry just yet to fulfill the needs that we're actually one of the largest importers of timber
worldwide.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So again, like, the deeper you dive, the more just you find out sketch things you find. So even with like the sanctions on Russia, because a lot of our timber historically came from Russia, and then with the sanctions, that obviously had to stop. But then apparently there are some findings coming out and some investigations coming out that we still bring in Russian timber. It's just labeled as coming from somewhere else. So these are the things that we need to be really mindful of. And if we do invest in locally made materials made in the UK, not only are we creating jobs, using local biomass, addressing issues here, We also know that where the materials come from, and there's like really, really clear, transparent supply chains. We're not funding nonsense.
That's a good reason, I guess, to go down that path.
Yeah.
I think that's really exciting, like trying to do it with the MDF style.
Yeah.
There's so much you can do with
Yeah,
that.
yeah, for sure.
Even you mentioned prefabrication. That could be.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. Yeah, especially because that also is very steady business for us. If we can get into those, just like a handful of companies that are prefab, they would already know the amount of houses they want to build, the amount of quantities they need. So it's very steady on our production books, if that makes sense. And it's just like a nice predictable rhythm of orders that we could develop. So I'm quite excited about prefab as well.
Okay. Yeah. When you were doing your MArch at Central St. Martin's, what was a moment that you thought to yourself that going down this traditional route of architecture maybe wouldn't be for you, and that to kind of instill the change you were looking for, there was a different path for you?
Coming into the program, I knew architecture wasn't the road for me. And however, I wanted to finish what I started. And I wanted to do it my way. So previously I had studied at Delft Technical University in the Netherlands, and I just really wasn't happy with like how the conversation was framed, especially around sustainability. Like it just wasn't deep enough for me. So I was very picky. After I dropped out there, I was very picky with where I wanted to go next. And it seemed like Central St. Martin's was the place for me, especially because it was just a lot more practical, like having something like Unit 2 where you actually get hands-on experience with natural materials, working with a builder. The conversation around sustainability and decarbonisation was a lot more sensitive and considerate of the social ramifications around these different things. So yeah, going into the program, I was just like, I'm not an architect. I'd already made up my mind, but I wanted to use the course as a vehicle towards achieving my career goals, even though I wasn't terribly clear what they were back then. I wanted to go actually more down the artistic route, more cultural work, and doing art installations, using natural materials, doing research, still kind of doing that as well. But yeah, that was more so my focus. And then just to finish off, I will say another reason why I continued my studies on the architecture track is because I do really value an architectural education. I think it's so unique. I think it really challenges and expands the mind and gives you a whole heap of skills and ways of thinking that are useful in every industry. So no matter what, I think I would have regardless still finished my architecture degree. So
I quite resonate with that. It's quite similar to me. Yeah. I'm not sure I align exactly with traditional practice, but I do very much have architectural interests.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go to a place where I could keep learning about that and discover like what path I want to take next.
For sure. Yeah. It is a privilege, I think, to study what we studied.
And I think you already touched on my second question, which was about what skills you think what skills do you think it gave you that are now helping you in your current role?
Communication is number one. Yeah. Storytelling, of being able to get people on board, even though nothing exists but a drawing and a few diagrams, but really sort of just inspiring people and getting them to also buy into your vision as well, is one. Being concise with language, even something as simple as like the weekly crits that we have, where you have to get out there and present your work, and it really pushes you. But I use that almost every week, whether it's speaking to the government or speaking to potential investors or speaking to future clients. Like, I have to regularly tell our story, our backstory, why we're doing what we're doing in a really concise way that captures the imagination, whilst also being highly technical as well. So it's not just fluff, it's not just a nice story. There are real benefits and numbers behind it as well, and data. So I think that's probably one thing, for sure.
Yeah, that's really good actually. I was wondering if there's any methods you found of, now that you're not working completely in architecture, how do you communicate this vision to people that may not think in the same way that architects do? Because this is a lot more highly technical than maybe an architect would usually usually venture into on the material side anyway. So how do you communicate that?
Is that to architects or to just the wider
Well, to all the different kind of players that
players?
you know have to speak
That's a good
to.
one. That's a good one.
So everyone thinks in a different way. So
Yeah. But I think at its core, like what we do is also still simple enough that everyone can grasp. Like there is a problem around surplus straw. Also creating value within the rural context and helping farmers with another revenue stream, for example, using waste to in something more valuable. I think everyone can kind of get on board with. And then housing, everyone lives in a home in the UK. Everyone, most people, if we follow the stats as well, you know, understand the fact that energy prices have gone up, the fact that condensation and mold growth is an issue in the UK. Indoor air quality is one as well. So it's accessible enough that everyone can sort of grasp it from their own end, even if there's one thing that one part that they're more passionate about than the other. Say if it is around farming and creating opportunities in the rural context, or it is around decarbonisation, or it is around air quality, or it is around using local materials. Some people just work with us for the simple fact that they don't want to ship in from other countries materials that we could make right here, and they're happy to pay a bit more of a premium on that as well. So
true. So everyone has their different like ways of connecting with like your story and what you do.
Yeah, for sure. I would say so. Yeah. Another one as well, which does tie in, is around heritage building. So I've met with so many people who, architects who are in the conservation world or retrofit a lot of older buildings, and they don't have that many options for locally made materials. So again, they're really excited about what we're doing, and yeah, that's another way that people connect as well.
There's a lot of heritage buildings in the UK as well.
A lot.
You'd think that's more being done to you.
It breaks my heart because there's so many people I've met and they're like, oh yeah, I live in an old cottage we insulated some years back, but we use plastic. And I'm like, no, but great, you insulated, but no, you use plastic. But they just didn't have the options back then. So yeah.
And then my next line of questioning has a lot to do with policy.
Yes.
So how much do you think that what you're doing really relies on working hand in hand with the people that work in policy? Because I know it's very hard to get new insulation materials certified for use, especially with what happened with Grenfell. So I just kind of want to know what your process is with that.
Yeah, we made friends very early on in the industry, and we found who our product champions are. So we joined associations like the Alliance for Sustainable Building Products, ASBP. We also joined Straw Bale Building UK, SBUK as well, and they're part of a larger European network. We're good friends with the folks over at UK Green Building Council as well. And with that, we've been able to build up quite a good network. They know about us. They send us opportunities regularly. They invite us out to speak for different events. Even we were invited to the House of Commons late last year as well, but I couldn't go because I had the super flu. Yeah. So there's lots of opportunities to inform policy, and there's a lot of people already doing that legwork. So we're just essentially just offering our extra 2 cents to it as well. And what I've also found is with policy, they also more so want to hear the voices of people in industry. So voices like ours, a company establishing manufacturing in the UK. What are your challenges? How can we make the path a bit smoother, a bit more illuminated for you? And yeah, it really helps to just reach out to people and just have people know about you, and also just be in these arenas. That there's a lot of people already doing the work.
So mostly networking.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, networking, and then also offering your voice and your perspective when requested. Yeah.
Okay then. And my final question is just to round it all up. You've given a lot of advice and tips throughout our whole conversation, but what would you say to an architecture student, let's say, who wants to potentially follow an alternative path, what kind of advice would you give them?
I would say definitely get out there, get into a room. I think I said this when I came to visit CSM last year. Get into rooms with people who aren't from your discipline, who aren't from your industry, because I don't think I would be where I am had I not met Millie and Hanming and got like put myself forward for that imperial opportunity. So it was great meeting people who have a background in commerce, who have a background in traditional engineering, and bringing my part and my perspective and my experience, and then we each just came up with something that was just amazing. And just meet people, go out, meet people. Just meet people, I would say.
Well, that's all. Thank you so much.
Great.
That wasn't too bad.
Thank you.